In this edition of AMD Support Unprocessed, we will discover how an incorrect or out-of-date BIOS can affect your system stability and demonstrate how to solve any symptoms that may be related to your BIOS. To start with, we will cover an overview of BIOS-related symptoms. We will then learn how to identify what your current BIOS version is and how to check if it is up to date or not. Next, we will demonstrate how to update your BIOS if required. And finally, we will be looking at any other potential BIOS-related issues. So Tim, what is a BIOS and why is it so important?
So the BIOS, it's the first piece of software that runs on your system that sets up your hardware ready for the operating system, for example Windows, to run correctly. So it tells the operating system how much memory and what processor is installed and things like that. So if the BIOS is incorrect or out of date, then it won't recognise the processor correctly, which could cause problems such as the system may run but could have memory errors, you may get some blue screen errors. The processor may even overheat because it's running out of specification, or even Windows may not recognise the processor properly, which could then bring up other problems such as, your PC may not be running at its full potential, you could think your processor is broken because some of the cores aren't working properly, or even some games or applications may not run if they can't detect the processor correctly themselves. So the two main ways of checking your BIOS version is to check either on the PC startup screen. So when the system starts up, you're normally presented with a screen in black and white that shows lots of details about the system. And on this screen, either in the top left or top right hand corner, is normally a series of numbers which show you the BIOS version. And the second way of identifying your BIOS version would be to look in the BIOS itself. So to do this, you're going to need to enter the BIOS, and this is normally by pressing a certain key during a certain part of the boot up process. So sometimes this could be a basic key such as delete or insert, but we would suggest you review your motherboard manual for full details about what key to press to enter the BIOS. And now once you're in the BIOS, you need to find the BIOS information or system information area, and in there you should be able to check your system details and what the BIOS version is. On our system here, we can see that our BIOS version is 0801. But you also may need to review your motherboard manual to find out where exactly your BIOS version number is within your BIOS if it's not under one of these easily identified places. So now you need to identify the motherboard manufacturer and the model number of your motherboard. So these numbers are normally printed on the motherboard, either around the CPU socket or between the PCI Express slots. As you can see here on our motherboard, it's made by ASUS and the model number is M4A79 Deluxe. So now we know who made our motherboard. We would go to the ASUS website, and now we're here, we just search for our motherboard on their support section. Okay, now we can see all the available downloads for our motherboard. So now we just check for the BIOS versions, and there we go. We can see the latest version for our board is version 3702, which is quite a few revisions newer than 0801. So we're going to download this BIOS ready for updating later. So what we would recommend is that you need to follow the instructions very carefully from your motherboard manufacturer. And these would give you the full steps to take when flashing or updating your BIOS. So we have a selection here of some motherboard manufacturers and their instructions. So if you're going to update your ASUS motherboard, it looks that ASUS have their instructions on updating their BIOS in the manual that comes with the motherboard. And if we look here on the Foxconn website, we can see that they have some FAQs and instructions on there about how to update their motherboard BIOS. And if we go over to Gigabyte, they have a similar sort of online instructions for you to follow. And if we go over here to MSI, they even have a document that you can download and print out to help you update your BIOS. So we always recommend that you follow these instructions of how to flash your BIOS. Different manufacturers may have different tools or features available to make this easier for you. So as you saw in the BIOS earlier on, there's lots of different areas in there where you could go and make some changes. If you do make some changes in the BIOS, then sometimes these can cause certain components to run out of specification, such as the CPU or the graphic card or the memory. And if this happens, then you may have some blue screen errors, the CPU or the graphic card or the memory may even overheat, or the system may not even boot up properly. So if this happens, we would recommend that you reset the BIOS to its default settings. So you may need to check your motherboard manual about how to do this, or there may be some instructions within the BIOS itself about resetting the BIOS back to the basic default settings, which should enable you to restart your system.
We hope you found this video helpful in solving some of the issues you might encounter with your BIOS. Remember, it is always important to keep the BIOS up to date to ensure system stability, and to use the components according to factory settings to maintain smooth operation.